Thank you for joining us for our live initial reactions to this episode, Last Rites. If you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe over at oncepodcast.com, and that way you'll receive every episode automatically. And you're just going to be seeing my head for this full initial reactions. Anyway, oncepodcast.com, go there to subscribe. And now here we go with our initial reactions. You're listening to Once, episode 249, Last Rites, Initial Reactions. Welcome back to another episode of Once, the unofficial podcast for ABC's TV show Once Upon a Time. I'm Daniel J. Lewis.
I'm Erin.
And we just finished watching this episode, Last Rites. So these are our initial reactions. We're going to be a bit all over the place, and wow.
Yeah, especially tonight, we're going to be all over the place.
I'm going to be the first to say, yes, I think I cried a little from this episode.
I definitely had some emotion brewing. There were some major feels in this episode.
From the beginning, when they were kind of focusing on Robin and certain things that he was saying, and his saying to Regina, "You are my future," and I came into this without a plan, I knew right away, Robin's dead.
Oh, I never thought that.
And I didn't think Hook would stay dead. Now, my theory proved wrong in the last episode when I thought it would be that the Ambrosia was still testing Hook and he passed the test by letting Emma go, and so the Ambrosia would bring him back from the dead. But no, Zeus did. Okay, so one of the Greek gods brought him back. Okay.
You're okay with that?
Well, if anyone is going to do it, a god doing it, okay, sure.
Yeah, that's true. I was like, even at the end, like I had a lot of feelings in this episode, like I said, but even at the end, like I thought it would have made more sense, even with the laws of magic, to bring Robin back, because we didn't really know what happened, and the crystal could have been misconstrued as this thing, and it would have been easy to just pop right away, then bring him back. But I guess he's the one who's really dead, and now Hook is back again, and I'm wondering if that's going to cause any resentment between Emma and Regina. I hope not. Yeah. But so sad.
Yeah. And just that moment, the several moments in this episode, the goodbyes, the emotions.
Mm-hmm. The sister moment was really endearing after, when they were both grieving together. Yeah. The funeral scene, that was very emotional. And the arrows, that was very appropriate. Mm-hmm. I felt bad when I saw little Roland.
Yeah. And naming the baby Robin. How fitting. I thought they would go for the spelling Robyn, but in the subtitles it was Robin, but that can still be the girl's version of the name as well.
Yeah, I know girls with both spellings. I did see that coming as soon as they were kind of discussing the name, but it's good. It's a good name. It's a girl's name too, so it works very well. It's going to get confusing if any of the other characters ever come back, because now there's Neil and there's Robin, and I'm sure there's going to be, somebody else. Arthur.
Oh, yeah. All the babies are being named after dead people.
Yeah. I was a little annoyed when Arthur was back so soon in this episode, and then I guess he served a purpose for sure. And I do really like how they're kind of maybe potentially redeeming his character in the underworld.
Yeah, I wonder if they had that planned from the beginning, his being a ruler of a broken kingdom, and that broken kingdom being the underworld. I thought if they didn't plan that from the beginning, what a clever way to bring him in and bring some resolution to his character.
Yeah, very clever. And I that's okay. If he wants to rule that broken kingdom, that's totally fine with me.
Yeah.
I'm not the biggest fan of him, and I think I called him out as evil pretty early on.
It was great to see Merida again in this episode.
Yeah, when I first saw her, I was kind of surprised, and I had to think back, and it's been a while, but I do remember that she was in Storybrooke. I was like, did she even come to Storybrooke? And then I remember she was like the puppet of the Dark One.
Yeah.
It
Yeah, and
all
helped
came back
Rumpel
to
get his
me.
courage back. And now, thanks, Merida, you've got this evil dark one now with the Olympian crystal, or half of it anyway. And he has his courage thanks to you, Merida.
Everyone in the chat room, I think you included, had commented on the dust. Like, take that dust. It's probably good for something. And then when we saw him kind of walking up to it, I'm like, I knew it. I knew there was, but it's not the dust. It's the crystal. Just like it's not the quill, it's the ink.
Yeah. So Rumpel is clearly the bad guy. And I think maybe even setting up to be the bad guy for season 6. And I'm
Again.
okay with that because I always thought he made a cool, mysterious, dark, cunning villain, a great villain. But at the same time, there was this part of me that wanted to see him have his happy ending, the Rumbell, all of that stuff as well. But he's even calling this now his kingdom, which is a little scary.
Yeah.
So
He Without Belle to kind of rein in the darkness, he might be a very scary villain. He's always had that humanity side to him in the past when we've seen him as kind of the villain. I always say kind of because it's always him and somebody else. It's hardly ever just been him. But without Belle to kind of neutralize his evil, without him trying, like, he's made it very clear he's not going to change for her, and that's almost a scary shift in him if that's where he goes with this. So he could be a new kind of villain, even though he's the same villain that we've seen through all 5 seasons.
right. And now a much, much more powerful villain. So maybe
Mm.
the final battle that he foresaw back in season 1 is actually between the Savior and himself.
Yeah, I could see that.
I'm not going to let go of this final battle thing.
I'm pretty hung up on that line of the pilot as well.
So, in order to defeat Rumpel, then we're going to need a lot of heroes. And you know what? We have some heroes on our side. And those are you, our wonderful supporters of the podcast. We could not do this podcast without you. So maybe this podcast will be like that Olympian crystal and defeat the darkness forever. And you are our heroes that help make that possible. So for this episode, I'd like to thank Lisa Slack and David Newland and our 32 heroes on Patreon. Thank you very much. We really appreciate your support of the podcast. You bring things together even faster than Hades can assemble a broken crystal. You make the podcast possible episode after episode. And we love getting to share the bloopers and some other bonuses with you through Patreon. So if you want to support the podcast, go to oncepodcast.com/hero. And we recently published some more bloopers from our latest couple episodes of the podcast. And there's some fun bloopers. I think you'll really like them. So go to oncepodcast.com/hero to become a hero to the podcast, get exclusive access to nice bonuses and fun things, and more. That's at oncepodcast.com/hero. And thank you for your support. I cringed when I saw Rumpel bang his cane down on the table in front of Mo, because that was, I don't know how, even years later, I don't really know how to describe that scene of Rumpel beating the life out of Mo French in Skin Deep in season 1.
Yeah.
And the music at that time was the music that just, it sounded like crying. And so it was very fitting for that scene back in Skin Deep. And it was so disturbing of a scene. And then to see here Rumpel, at first I wondered, why does Rumpel have his cane? And then when he pounded that down, that, to me, kind of, that's the moment when I knew for sure, Rumpel is not coming back. There is no hero left in him. There is no pure heart. I don't know what his heart is right now, if he even has one. no, there's a theory. Maybe he pulled his heart out, and that's why he's doing all of these bad things.
Oh,
And maybe
maybe.
that's why his true love's kiss couldn't wake Belle. But that aside, I think that he's totally villain, and reminding Mo of that. Oh, that's a lawsuit waiting to happen right there.
Yeah, I remember cringing even in Manhattan when, sorry, I just had a blank. I was like, am I saying the right episode? Um, I remember thinking even in Manhattan when he like grabbed his cane in such a way, Emma was saying, "You don't have magic here." And he said, "Oh, I don't need magic." And he grabbed his cane. And I remember cringing then,
Oh yeah,
just thinking like, "Oh my goodness, is he going to beat up Emma?" Like it was such a worldly thing, not a magic thing, because he did that as a, you know what I mean? Like he did that as a human, not as a whatever he is, not as a dark one. Because in season one in Skin Deep, he wasn't, the curse wasn't even broken yet.
yeah. He's cunning. He is dark. He is selfish. I mean, all of these characteristics do make a great villain, but we've seen that villain go from seemingly redeemed back to being a villain, and now even deeper than before.
Yeah. He's, I agree with you. He's totally gone.
I'm really curious to see some of the screenshots of other things from this episode that we'll dig into in our upcoming full discussion on Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time at oncepodcast.com/live. A couple of the things I want to see are what were the words on the pages that told of Hades' weakness, as well as I thought for a moment maybe we saw someone's face in that spirit that came out of the River of Souls.
Oh, really?
And so I want to see, is that a face we recognize? I could be completely wrong, but I thought I saw maybe someone's face. So we'll go back, get a screenshot of that, see if it was anyone we recognize. I'm glad that they explained that, oh, that's never happened before, but maybe things are changing because Hades is gone.
Yeah, that could be. I was confused why it didn't make Arthur turn into a lost soul,
Yeah.
because technically the water was touching him, but
Well, yeah,
spirit
yeah.
in the water. I
Spirits are
saw
affected by fire, but not, they apparently aren't wet. So,
it's
yeah.
interesting. I did like the book twist. It reminded me a lot. I'm sure that Jacqueline will bring this up as well. And I heard in one of the previous podcasts that I wasn't on, they talked about Charmed and Buffy. And I was like, oh, it's not just me that talks about that in this podcast. But the book thing reminded me of in Charmed, the Book of Shadows, the dead relatives used to update the book. And sometimes the ink would still be wet from them, their spirits coming to update the book in Charmed that kind of told them everything. Or they would turn it, the wind, but it was really their spirit would turn it to the right page for them. So
Mm.
it was kind of cool that Hook was able to communicate through the book.
Yeah. A little bit of a stretch, maybe, but then
Yeah, for
again,
sure.
if you subscribe to the theories that were presented in the movie Gravity, then apparently only two things can expand across universes. One is gravity, and the other is love.
There you go.
So Hook used love to influence gravity to turn the pages. Whoa, we just got sci-fi on you.
Oh, I assumed the book just turned the pages.
Yeah, that could be too.
I like the book is an entity of I mean the
A
book
book is
is
an entity in itself.
I mean the book is an entity in and of itself. So that's what I assumed was happening there. Just Hook passing the message through the books, through the realms, kind of is what reminded me of the Charmed phenomenon.
Yeah. So we have two episodes left, but they're being aired on the same day. So we have a two-part season finale coming up on the next episode of Once Upon a Time. So make sure that you are ready with your DVRs, with your viewing times, your schedule, everything cleared so that you can start watching Once Upon a Time an hour early. It starts at 7 or 6 Central. And make sure that you are ready We'll have our initial reactions after that at our normal time. We will love having that discussion because it seems like they wrapped up a lot of story in this episode, a lot of the plot lines and such. So I think that the next episode will really be about not wrapping up stories, but giving us a cliffhanger for season 6.
Yes, for sure.
And that's a pattern they've been using for the last couple seasons now, making the season finale something that's really a story in and of itself, a miniature story, two-parter story, and then something that really gets us looking forward to the next season. And it may be just that one little clip at the end of the episode that is the teaser for the next season. We'll see.
Yep, I'm looking forward to it.
So we want your feedback. Before I wrap this up, Erin, was there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we want your feedback on this episode of the podcast. No, not the podcast. So we want your feedback on this episode of Once Upon a Time, Last Rites. And please send that to us. Go to the show notes for this episode at oncepodcast.com/249. Let me just say that differently. Please send us your thoughts and theories about this episode, Last Rites, from Once Upon a Time, and we'd love to incorporate those into our upcoming full discussion of this episode when we record the podcast live on Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern at oncepodcast.com/live. To send us your feedback, go to the show notes for this episode at oncepodcast.com/249. Scroll down to the bottom. You can comment there, or you can get our email address, our phone number, our voice feedback system. It's all there in the show notes at oncepodcast.com/249, as well as a bunch of sharing buttons. So you can tweet this episode, you can Facebook it, you can Google Plus it, you can Reddit it, you can share it on all kinds of other social networks and share it with your friends and family. And that's a wonderful way that you can give back to the podcast. Even if you can't afford to be a hero to us, you can still be a supporter in it. You can sharpen the swords. You can it's a weird metaphor.
Whittle the stakes.
Even if you can't support us financially, you can share the episodes, and that's a great way to support the podcast. So go to oncepodcast.com/249 for our feedback information and to share this episode with others. Thank you very much for listening to this initial I don't say thank you yet. I saved the thank you for last. In the meantime, connect with us on Twitter at OncePodcast, and I'm Daniel J. Lewis on Twitter at The Ramen Noodle.
I'm Erin, and I'm on Twitter at Erin J. Cruz.
Be sure to send us in your feedback before Wednesday afternoon on the day that we'll be recording our full discussion, and we'll have Jeremy and Jacqueline back for that. And until next time, we'll do whatever we have to. And thanks for listening. Once Podcast is a proud member of Noodle.mx Network. Find more of our award-winning and award-nominated podcasts to make you think, laugh, and succeed at Noodle.mx. Big thanks to our heroes for supporting this episode of the podcast. If you would like to be a hero too and get exclusive access to stuff like our bloopers and early access to spoilers and more, please go to oncepodcast.com/hero. And thank you for your support. And we're done.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a quick initial reactions.
It was, but I just felt more organized because I had everything written down. Like I had a couple things that we didn't. It's not we didn't talk about them. Just it's not like point by point. So I just kind of let it go.
Yeah.
That funeral scene, man. I'm not good at funeral scenes.
And when a character on screen cries, that's like the signal to audience cry now.
Yeah. I literally had written in my notes, like Emma does tortured soul so well. Like I think I put JMO. JMO does tortured soul so well. That's probably why they make her miserable all the time. She is so good. Like ever since, was it like what episode did Graham die in?
The
107?
episode 7. Yeah, the heart is a
Yeah.
lonely hunter.
Ever since that episode, it's like, yep, we're just gonna kill everybody she loves because she cries like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and then they had a funeral. The other funeral scene was for Neil.
Yeah. Oh, poor
Poor
Emma.
Roland, by the way.
I know. Sad. I was wondering, so he was with Little John. Oh, that was something. Well, we don't have to talk about it. I'm sure you guys will talk about it in the full discussion. But I was like, who's he with? I kept trying to look because he was so far away from Regina and Zelina and the other heroes. But he left with Little John, I think.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
probably. Because it was a big guy.
And then I was going to mention too that the baby was dressed in white at the funeral, which
Oh.
is very symbolic of hope when everyone else is kind of dressed in black.
So Matthew Paul thinks I look like Zeus
Oh,
when I had
I
hair.
don't have the video.
I have to look at that again. Well, just my face, my head, and Zeus, apparently.
I'm going to look.
I'll have to compare myself to Zeus. That sounds very weird.
Oh, like the actor.
Yeah.
I got you. I did see that.
Not like that I right now look like a god. I don't
Right.
think
That's what
Matthew Paul is
I was like,
saying
you look
that.
the same, Daniel. You look the same as the last time I
Though
saw
I do
you.
have the stubble going, so maybe I could inherit Cruella's title.
Maybe they did that on purpose. They were like, we need an actor that looks like that Daniel J. Lewis who podcasts about us and tries to get us to hire Jacqueline all the time.
They could just ask me to be in one of the episodes.
But you're not a SAG actor.
Yeah.
It's very hard to get that card, I've heard.
Hmm. They could just put out a call for extras for the series finale or something. Just, people in the audience somewhere at a wedding.
Yeah, they should do that and they should invite us.
It's
My
like
Go
there's a
ahead.
trailer for the Muppet movie, and one of the trailers said something like, "This isn't the song you thought it was. That song is copyrighted. This song was written by a guy who said he would give us the rights to the song for free as long as we put him in the movie."
Oh,
And we
nice.
did. And then they freeze frame on this one spot and they point out this extra in the background that's dancing and they say, that's him.
Yeah, I can't remember. I was told at one point how it was that you could have union free, like unionless extras. But I was on a set of a Canadian TV show once and I was like, can we just like walk by? I was like 13. And they had like it was this Canadian TV show and they like invited people to go and there were only like 5 of us that went and I was like, "Can we just, like, walk by?" And they were like, "No, you're not union, like, we can't do that." But I know that some shows do that, so I don't know how they get around it. I don't know how it all works, but I remember reading a casting call when they were filming Mockingjay or, like, when they were preparing to film Mockingjay, there was a huge call for non-union extras to be the residents of the Capitol. And they had
Hmm.
actually asked for anybody that had, like, very unique facial features to come forth, which if you like, you've seen Mockingjay, right?
Yeah.
And, like, all the Capitol people are so, very distinct in their features and their dress and in their makeup and all that stuff, so I remember I watched the movie last night with the girls that I used to nanny, and they were, like, commenting on the facial features and stuff, and I was like, "Oh, actually, I read this casting call, like, 3 years ago when they were preparing for that movie." So none of them would have been union.
Well, let's close this out for this night. Everyone, we will be back Wednesday with Jeremy and Jacqueline. We hope to see you then. Please send us your feedback and theories on this episode, and we'll try to incorporate those if we can. Until next time, please remember, subscribe at oncepodcast.com or in your favorite podcast app of choice. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Right.